From games to TV shows to comics, merchandise, and now even movies, all spanning over 30 years, Sonic the Hedgehog has been a household name since the very first game in the series released in 1991. Originally Sega's answer to Mario, the Sonic series has gone on to quickly form its own identity. And Sonic's identity has always been one with the times. It's changed its DNA many, many times, and Sonic usually reflects temporary trends of each retrospective decade. Now, Sonic has been around for a long time, and not every Sonic fan has been around for as long as Sonic. But thanks to the internet, it's really easy to just hop online and see what Sonic was like back then. If you really use your imagination, you could dream up of a time and place in which you weren't alive yet, living vicariously through the experiences of other people that you hear about. It's fun, at least to me. I did it all the time as a kid, when I went online and I read about certain things I was really into. For example, I was wondering what it would have been like for me if I were a kid in the 80s and 90s reading Dragon Ball as it was published in Weekly Jump. It's really easy to do this kind of thing when you just have years of hindsight. Now, this brings me back to Sonic. Since I've been a Sonic fan for a long time, fans, usually on the younger side, or ones that became fans later on, usually ask what it was like being a fan during an era that they may not have been around for, but greatly admire. Your mileage may vary, as this definitely depends on who you're talking to. I've been a Sonic fan since the early 90s, so I'd love to share my memories and experiences of being a Sonic fan throughout the classic era. Before I get started, I want to take a moment to thank my channel members. This video shoutout goes to Doomhorse. Thank you for being such a cool dude, Doom. And if you'd like to have your name here and to have a possible shoutout, please consider becoming a member by hitting the join button. And thank you to all my patrons too. The support means a lot and it allows me to keep creating content. Even if you can't become a member or a patron, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell. It all helps so much. And without further ado, let's get back to the video. For starters, I am a 90s and 2000s kid. I was just a few months old when Sonic 1 released, so when Sonic was quickly beginning to blow up in the early 90s, I was too young to really grasp what was happening. Hell, as far as I know, the earliest memory I can conjure up is from when I was like 3 years old, and my parents had just moved and I was looking up at everything packed in the moving truck after we arrived at our new home, about an hour away from our original home in Chicago. Apparently, we as humans become cognizant as early as about 5 months of age. But just because you're self-aware as a toddler, it doesn't mean that you have even the slightest grasp of what the world is like. I consider myself fully aware of who I and the people around me were by the time I was about 5 or 6. But at least that's what my brain is telling me now. So you're probably wondering, what the hell does this have to do with me being a Sonic fan? Well, it all comes down to what I can remember. I had just turned 3 years old when I got my Sega Genesis for Christmas, and my mom bought Sonic 2 for me a month later. This was the very first time I ever recalled seeing Sonic, although I'm sure I may have seen him before, like in commercials or on TV or something, but my memory of this moment is clear, vividly clear. I was with my mom, cousin, and aunt, and we all went to a strip mall. We went inside and Sonic 2 was for sale. My aunt heard good things about the game and encouraged my mom to get it for me. At least this is according to my mom, since I was too young to remember. What I do remember, though, is holding the box on the ride home, studying the front and back covers, being mesmerized by the character designs, colors, and just everything about it. It was the very first time I saw Sonic and Tails, and Robotnik, kinda. It was just cool as hell. Once I got home and played it, I was all in. I was a Sonic fan from this point forward, and I was falling more and more in love with it by the day. Playing Sonic 2 as a toddler was difficult. Chemical Plant proved to be a huge challenge that I was eventually able to pass, but for some reason, I could just never beat the game. I think the farthest I was able to get was Sky Chase over at a friend's house, but I don't think we were able to pass Wing Fortress or something. But anyway, this rinse and repeat cycle of me starting the game and stopping halfway or near the end led me to believe that the game would go on forever, like I would just never run out of zones to play. Regardless of its difficulty, I loved Sonic 2, and I wanted to share my enthusiasm with my friends at preschool. One of the kids there told me about one of the cartoons that was airing every Saturday morning. And for those of you who are familiar, you know what I'm talking about. It's Sat AM. What's funny is, I remember my friend telling me about the cartoon, but I cannot for the life of me actually remember watching it. But I know I did, because shortly after we got the internet in 2001, I ended up finding a MIDI of the Sat AM theme. I was on a website called Sonic HQ, I think, and my mom immediately recognized the tune. She ran into the room and she was like, "Oh, is that the Fastest Man Alive song?" And I was like, "Oh, so I've listened to this?" She's like, "Yeah, you used to watch it every weekend." Or at least I used to watch the TV show it came from. To this day, I can't exactly say Sat AM is my favorite Sonic cartoon, so maybe this is why my brain never bothered to retain those memories. So, back to the games a little bit, or at least something relating to the games. Sega Genesis games had clamshell cases, and the art was printed on a piece of paper that you would slip in between the plastic, or the hard shell clam case plastic, and the clear protective plastic. I would take that paper out of my Sonic 2 case, and I would draw on the back of it, making my own alternate cover, before I even knew what alternate covers even were. And I'm pretty sure this is where my love for drawing truly began. All because of Sonic. I remember specifically drawing Sonic and Tails like this. Shortly after this, or maybe right around the same time, I don't remember, there was a Sonic 3 campaign at McDonald's. And I got the Sonic toy, and my sister ended up getting the small yellow ball toy. You know, she was a baby. I was so young, so I didn't really get the significance of Happy Meal collaborations, but this was my very first Sonic toy, and I held it in such high regard. Moving into kindergarten, I would try to seek out other Sonic fans, but I actually had better luck converting the friends I did already have into Sonic fans. I remember specifically getting 2 friends into Sonic. Their names were Jamie and Ben, and we would play pretend that we were Sonic on the playground. Jamie always insisted on being Sonic, but I had no issue with being Tails, since I loved Tails. I thought he was really cool. And Ben always wanted to be Dr. Robotnik, and he would chase us around with his arms out and going, "Grrr." It was a whole lot of fun. Outside of home and the playground, video stores were a big thing in the 90s. You could rent movies and games for the weekend, and then you could return them. It was a great alternative compared to buying media. I would go to our local video store and discover that there was even more Sonic. I would rent Sonic 1, Sonic 3, and Sonic Spinball constantly. I would ask my mom to rent them every weekend, so she figured it would just be cheaper if she would just buy them for me. So now I had several Sonic games to call my own. Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, and Sonic Spinball. And I couldn't beat any of them. And because of that, I thought they all went on forever. I never got to play Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine at this time, because it never really caught my eye. And, that's likely because the games that were on the shelf were in alphabetical order, so it wasn't by the typical Sonic games. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I did rent it at one point in time. I just don't remember doing so. When I played Sonic 3 for the first time, it quickly became my favorite. I loved the music, I loved the zones, or at least what I could get up to. I think it was Marble Garden. I don't think I could get past that. It was huge. And I just loved the way the gameplay felt in general, like with the elemental shields, flying with tails. These were things that you didn't have in Sonic 2. And I really liked Knuckles a lot as well. Speaking of Knuckles, I wasn't even really sure what he was. I just kind of assumed he was a dog or something, and my friends had a lot of fun playing the multiplayer as well. Sonic 2's multiplayer was kind of fun, but not like Sonic 3's. So, for Christmas 1994, or maybe it was 95, I think it was 94, my grandparents ended up getting me Sonic & Knuckles. I remember having my friends over to play it. and we would all take turns by picking up where one of us died. I specifically remember eating pizza as we played it, and I thought I was actually going to die because there's a long piece of cheese that I swallowed, but it was so long it was sticking out of my mouth, like from down in my stomach out of my mouth. Anyway, I ate the cheese, and I couldn't beat this game either. I think we couldn't get past Flying Battery? Yeah, we hardly got that far. Anyway, I remember the game case coming with a small ad for a Sonic plush, and I wanted it so badly. He looked so derpy, and he was wearing like a white shirt with the Sonic and Knuckles logo on it. I always wanted it, but I was never able to get it, even to this day. In order to get it, you needed to fill out some kind of paperwork and mail back the flyer with a check. And because I was a dumb kid, it all seemed complicated to me, so I don't know if I ever asked my parents for it. I probably didn't. You might be wondering about other Sonic games like Sonic CD or even the Game Gear titles. Well, to be honest with you, I had no idea that Sonic CD or the Game Gear in general even existed in the 90s. I just thought it was the Genesis and the 32X. For those of you who don't know, the 32X was an add-on that is very similar to the Sega CD, with the main purpose of extending the Sega Genesis's lifespan. It was a big, clunky, and inconvenient piece of tech. Oh, what?
Do I hear Game Gear slander?
Yeah.
Wee woo, wee woo, wee woo.
I thought you opened up a soda right behind me.
No. That's the heavy breathing of the authorities coming to defend the Game Gear.
You gotta get over your Game Gear love.
More videos on this coming soon. There better not be any more Game Gear slander in the script.
Okay, Axel. Okay. No more Game Gear slander. Sorry. Actually, yes, we're gonna have all the Game Gear slander.
What?
Anyway, back to the 32X. It was, calling it a piece of tech is, that's too much of a compliment. It was a piece of shit, okay? The 32X was a piece of shit. You're probably wondering how I knew about the 32X, because its lifespan was so short, and it was just kind of there and gone in just like a span of like a year or even half a year. Well, one day at the video store, I saw a huge cardboard cutout of the art of Knuckles from the cover of Knuckles' Chaotix, advertising the game. So, for my birthday that year, I asked my aunt, who got me the Sega Genesis, to get me Knuckles' Chaotix and the 32X. I was so excited to play it. We got home, and I think my parents struggled to hook it up, but we eventually got it working! And I hated it. God, I hated it. It just wasn't what I was expecting at all. I mean, I liked the new characters, Espio, Mighty, Vector, and Charmy. But this was not like the Sonic games I had and loved. Something was missing. Moving on from the games that I had at this point, which were Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic Spinball, and Knuckles' Chaotix, I don't remember what year it was exactly. I think it was somewhere in the mid-90s, but I do remember getting Sonic pasta from Kroger. It was my favorite food at the time, simply because it had Sonic on it. Yeah, I was so obsessed with Sonic, man. I drew him all the time, and I was even Sonic for Halloween. My folks still have pictures of me dressed up in my Sonic costume with my middle finger sticking up, because I thought the finger wag that Sonic did on the Sonic 1 title screen was him swinging his middle finger around. And my parents thought it would be funny to purposefully never correct me on this. Imagine the genuine shock on my face once I learned that not only was the middle finger considered incredibly inappropriate, but it was actually Sonic's index finger. Oops. Okay, give me a break. With it swinging back and forth like that as a kid, it was hard to tell. Anyway, the next game to release, Sonic 3D Blast, it was somehow on my mom's radar. She picked it up for me shortly after its release, and I actually liked this game a lot. Yeah, it's got a lot of bullshit, but I think it could be my nostalgia for it. If I take a step back and look at it objectively, this one does have a lot of flaws, but it also has a lot of charm. and it has birds. Birds are cool. I love birds. Okay, so rewinding a little bit here. Remember how I said I used to watch Sat AM, but I never really cared too much for it? I would go to my grandparents' house in Wisconsin for about 2 weeks at a time every summer as a little kid. I used to love watching TV there since they had a whole bunch of channels that we didn't have, since they had satellite TV or something. But one of those channels that they had that I loved was Toon Disney. I don't remember which year it was, but I'm pretty sure it was 1998, and I was surfing through the channels, and I stumbled upon Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. This one I immediately became fond of. Sonic 2 was my first Sonic game, and I always saw Sonic and Tails as the main protagonists, so this one felt more like Sonic to me. Dr. Robotnik was simply the best character on the show, though, and it got me to see him as more than just the bad guy you would beat at the end of the level. He was actually this bumbling, mean idiot with character. I would look forward to watching it every summer in the late 90s and into the early 2000s as well, until my parents got digital cable in 2001. Then I can continue watching the show in my own room until Toon Disney took it off the air in 2002 for some reason. God, that was so disappointing. So I would say this was about it for my experience with Sonic in the 90s. There's a lot missing here, like Sonic CD, the Game Gear games, the Sega Saturn games. I mean, my mom tried getting me one, but the guy at Walmart just told her it wasn't even worth it, so don't even bother. I missed Sonic Adventure, I missed the Sonic OVA, and Sonic Underground. But that's simply because I didn't know they existed. I didn't think to look in video game sections outside of the areas for the Genesis, and unless I saw a commercial for it on TV, then it flew under my radar. I never read any gaming magazines either. Oh yeah, including the Archie comics. I didn't know those existed until about 2000, when one of my friends had a whole drawer full of them. I finally found out about Sonic Adventure in 2000 thanks to a Toys R Us ad, and everything else was thanks to the internet that we got in 2001. That's when I finally found out about stuff like the Game Gear and the Sonic OVA. You know, to be fair, I think it's also because in the late 90s, I think I was just so hyper-focused on Pokemon that Sonic took a huge backseat in terms of importance, even though I still loved it. It was just hard to not get absorbed into the Pokemania craze. Maybe I should make a video on that someday. Well, it was just like nothing else really mattered. Well, besides Star Wars. Episode 1 just came out, and I was also really into that at the time. All throughout the 90s, I would sit in front of the TV in our basement for hours playing my Genesis. I sunk so much time into Sonic, and I also ended up sharing my love of Sonic at school with my friends. I was really outspoken about it. And I wanted more. I wanted the toys, I wanted t-shirts. But with the exception of the Halloween costume, it just felt like the merchandise didn't really exist anywhere. Or it needed to be specialty ordered. Kid me would have killed to have access to the flood of merchandise that's currently available. I mean, if you walk into a Target or a Walmart, for example, you could find just so much Sonic. They have action figures, they have apparel, they've got all these other little knickknacks like watches, and I don't even know, dude. They'll put his face on anything. Seriously, it's not that hard to find. So I'm just really glad that kids these days that love Sonic can get that Sonic bed comforter or that action figure that they always wanted. Overall, I can't really say that I've had any negative moments being a Sonic fan in the 90s. Sonic always seemed cool and respected, and I don't think I ever got made fun of even once for liking Sonic. It seemed like the series was just highly respected amongst young children. Sonic, without a doubt, altered the course of my life. Without Sonic, I wouldn't have the friends I have today. And I don't even know if I would have gotten into drawing without it. My entire career is art and drawing. So I don't really know where I'd be today if my mom never picked up Sonic 2 for me. It's actually scary to think about. So whether it was direct or indirect, it's really crazy to me to think that this blue rat has been a cornerstone in my life. And even though I may be critical of the series sometimes, it's because I love it. My love for Sonic started in the early to mid-90s, and it never really went away. No matter how much the series has changed, I've stuck by it. I also have made a video on my experience being a Sonic fan in the 2000s, which I have to say is my favorite era so far. So all that leaves left is the meta era of games, which is basically the 2010s. Maybe I'll make a video on that someday. It's not going to be as kind as this one, but there is a lot about the meta era that I do like. So it's not just going to be all negativity. There will be some praise. But until then, now that I've yapped here for about 20 minutes, when and how did you get into Sonic? Did you get into Sonic in the 90s like me? Or did you become a fan in the 2000s or the 2010s? Or even recently in the 2020s? I would love to hear your story, so let me know down below. And thank you for watching. Matane.